a 100,000 plus person festival in 48 hours. So
Hmm.
that's why I'm here today and excited to be here. Thanks.
Lexi, you may hear me call her Alexa also, but Lexi.
Yeah, hi. I'm Lexi. I am a broadcast meteorologist and am part of the Live 5 News team here in Charleston, South Carolina. On a day-to-day basis, I analyze atmospheric data, weather models, the radar, satellite imagery to produce forecasts not only for TV, but also for digital and social media platforms. I've kind of been all over the Southeast. I'm currently in Charleston. Before here, I worked at News Channel 9 in Chattanooga, Tennessee, where I was a meteorologist and a news reporter. I also was the weather forecaster for a radio station in Blacksburg, Virginia, and I'm from Georgia. So all over the Southeast. And yeah.
Awesome. So there's a little bit of housekeeping. Several of you submitted questions in advance, but if you have any questions, you can drop them in the chat and we'll try to get to them. But we have several ready to go. So we'll jump right into it. Let's start with the beginning of the planning process. From your professional perspective, what is the biggest weather-related mistake you see event organizers make, and at what point should weather planning begin? And we'll kick this off with you, Stephanie.
Oh, great. Thanks. I would probably say the first thing I see mistake is people don't think it's going to happen to them. You really don't. I know I didn't, and I live on the coast. I can see the water from my office. So that would probably be the first mistake is you don't think it's going to happen to you. And what was the second question of that? There was a second part. I'm sorry.
At what point should weather planning begin?
Oh, that should be done way in advance. If you do not have a plan in effect written out, I would suggest you start on it today or tomorrow. But you should have one at least a year out in advance, and every year you should check it. And I know Nick will probably be able to talk more into that because that is something that we did not have it in place at the level that we needed it in place because it was a disastrous situation with a hurricane that destroyed our city. So that was that situation. And we've also had king tides, and again, high winds. So we've had different situations, and you really can't address them all, but you need to have some type of plan and action.
Nick, we'll lead it over to you.
Uh, the planning process, I would say number one, it starts every day. Don't wait, to an event. You need to get to know your people or build relationships. As my college baseball coach said, you need to call somebody when it's inconvenient for you, right? So build relationships with people beforehand because if I know the lady or gentleman putting on the venue as a first responder already know what your pressure points are, what you're going through, and there may be something that I can tell you from my point of view that will help you that you're not even going to ask me. So relationships, relationships, relationships would be because it's not just weather, you're dealing with other factors. Okay. Um, call them when it does not matter to you. Two, I would say you asked the biggest weather related mistake. Is that what you asked? Was that the other
Yes.
question?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. The biggest mistake I see, and it's on both sides of the fence, it's everywhere, and I don't think it's really a mistake as it is. We just get too busy sometimes. We got so much going on as we wait, uh, and we don't call one another, like I just said, until we're seeing it on the news. Well, we got bad weather coming our way. Well, that's not the time to really start preparing. You're behind the eight ball at that point. So, um, start getting to know your people today, which you already do, I know, but starting to get to know basically for law enforcement, it's what assets they have, how can you help me in this area, and because they may be able to tell them your whole plan, because they may be able to fill those gaps where they don't have a clue what you're 100% doing. Like for example, when it comes to pyrotechnics at these shows and different things, right? So I let our hospital know here in our town that there's going to be pyrotechnics. Why do I do that? We don't have a burn center here. So if somebody gets burned, we're going to have to airlift them to Birmingham. And that's one thing that's real critical in a moment's notice, that we don't need to be taking them to DCH. They need to be airlifted to Birmingham to save their life. So I hope that answers those two questions from my point.
Yes, it does. Lexi, you have anything to add?
Yeah, so kind of a loaded question here, but definitely the biggest mistake is there's no plan. You know, you're thinking what if, but there isn't an actual plan in place. And I think majority of it is more so rainfall. You know, what if it rains? What if lightning strikes? You know, but then it comes into the question of, you know, where do you go? What if lightning strikes within 5 miles or even further than that? Where do you want people to go? So the biggest mistake is just not having that plan in place. You know, a lot of people are thinking of the rainfall, but not everyone sees that. Here in Charleston, we are under a severe drought level, a few of us in an extreme drought level. And I just was emceeing an event a month ago, and it was an outdoor event where we are under severe heat warnings all the time. And yes, it can rain, but not everyone sees that rainfall. And a big thing is just the heat here, providing enough water for everyone. You know, everyone was kind of crowded under the tents and finding the shade. They had kind of like a pool with ice because there were a lot of dogs there. So, you know, they thought of animals because even the animals need to stay cool. But, you know, it's kind of the thought process of the what if outside of just rain, you know, having that plan in place.
Awesome. Okay. Lexi, this is going to go back to you, the next question, and then anyone else can
Okay.
jump in and respond. Um, Here we go. How far in advance can organizers realistically rely on a forecast when making decisions about delaying, rescheduling, or canceling an event?
Yeah, so realistically, I would give it a week. That is when you can really start to narrow down. Um, we get some models in that can give you around 2 to 3 weeks in advance. I get a lot of brides who will ask me their weather for their wedding a few months in advance. I can't do a few months in advance, but realistically, for an event, I would give you a solid week's notice is when I can really start to pin down rain is likely this weekend. And then within the next 24 to 48 hours before your event is the timing of when, you know, versus early in the morning and afternoon and evening time.
Awesome. So several of you asked about weather apps. Is there a weather app that any of you recommend? And are weather apps enough, or should larger events consider working directly with the meteorologist or a weather monitoring service?
Um,
I want to say that, you know, I really trust my meteorologist. There's somebody I can talk to. They're local. They know the area. Now, my radar, I'm sure everybody's got that. It's a good radar, but somebody like Lexi in her area, she knows where she works. She knows her people. She knows where they got to be driving from, where they, you know, things like that, going home. So, this is just my point of view. I'm a people person. I would say trust your local meteorologist first and foremost.
Mhm.
yeah, absolutely. I think my number one enemy is Apple Weather on your phone. I get this is I would say, if not number one, number two most asked question I get as a meteorologist is what app can I trust? And my first response is always your local weather app. Every single news station will have a local weather app. We have ours, and the difference between your local one versus the national. And my favorite part is it really pinpoints where you are. So you'll get a notification saying lightning strike detected 10.8 miles away. I have mine here. I have our Live 5 weather app. I have multiple from little places every time I travel somewhere. You know, I trust them because if you think about it, you have the weather service, you have different areas, but you don't have local meteorologists who are experts in that area. Weather Channel, AccuWeather, those are great resources. But again, a weather app is the main point as to who is going to be there and where you're getting that from. I'm a meteorologist here in Charleston. My team updates our Live 5 weather app. So if you're having an event in Charleston, that is the most accurate information you're going to get. We're the experts of the area. If you want kind of a basis, okay, temperatures in the 90s, that's when you can go to more of those bigger national weather forecasts. So the National Weather Service or your local stations, what I usually recommend.
Awesome.
Hey, Kristen, before you move on,
Mhm.
can I go back to your last question?
Sure.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but it was the decision of canceling an event. How did the council reschedule? This is a big question that I get when I go speak to places as emergency manager. And this is just my point of view at it, right? Because everybody said there's a lot of people on this phone call. You've got a lot of money riding on the line, right? You've already spent a ton of money. So I'm just going to tell you, I don't have any money on the line. All I'm worried about is the people. Now you are too, right? But I have worked down at the amphitheater with the alcohol license part of it and done a lot of things and see how this goes. So, but there is really no one size fits all here. But I will say this, and this is just me. Nobody's going to, people's going to remember the event on YouTube, right? Of what happened at the event. But 2, 3, 4 months down the road, they're not going to be talking about that anymore. They're going to be moving on to the next event. What they're going to be talking about is well, we don't talk about if we get home safely. What we talk about is the major wreck or the shooting at the school or something that happens at an event, and we don't want our event to make national news. So what I mean by that is your safety triggers, don't go off emotions on this. Yes, I want to have this. This is, I mean, we need to. And, of course, financial pressures, I talked about that. Get out of those, and a thing that you got to have to me is the director or whoever, whatever the title is, has got to have a clear chain of command on every event that you have, and just stay in that chain of command of people that you trust and let people do their job and do it safely, because at the end of the night, it doesn't matter what country act's coming on or whatever the event is, going home is the most important part of the event.
That's a great point, Nick. And leading into that, do you have a recommendation of what the chain of command should be? Are you working directly with the city manager or the police department? Is it the event planner that should be making that call? What should that chain of command look like?
That's going to be different in every town because we all know you got political pressure points, okay? But to me, this is just me thinking back. Life is not political. It doesn't matter what side of the street you're on or whatever. We all want to go home safely. That's not why they pay us in my profession. Okay. My job is to look out for 227,000 people plus the 100-something thousand that come in here every Saturday. So, you know, so repeat your question one more time so I answer it.
Just who do you work with directly on event day? I know you have a lot
So,
going on. You have, the college having football games, or it could be a concert. So what does that typically look like? Who's your point of contact on event day?
So we work with the city manager, depending on what goes on. But mainly, I do my point of view, and then I turn it over to the instant commander, which is usually the fire department that does ours because they know instant command really well. So if you were reaching out to your local fire chief there, your local fire people, they do instant command. I can say this, I've been in law enforcement. I'm just going to tell you, there's a power struggle sometimes between your law enforcement and your police department. Okay. I'm just being real with you. This is every day. They like each other, don't get me wrong, but policemen and firemen do two totally separate jobs. Yes, they do one goal, but firemen do the command structure better than anybody else. Okay. So they're going to be the ones to help you a lot better. And then everybody else fits in there. We call it in the emergency management world unified command, which is where you come in, police, fire, people, come in and everybody has a seat at the table. And my thought to be with go, this answers a lot of questions. Going back to one of the early questions is when you start planning for that, well, that's today. Bring everybody to the table and then everybody knows, and then you can have your individual meetings and go from there. But I'll work with anybody from police, fire, UA, the coaching staff there, the gentleman over the coach, things like that. Because when they come to an events, they want certain things, so we have to think about here at our amphitheater, we have a bridge up above it. Well,
Mhm.
with a chain link fence, well, what could be stuck to that fence and cause a lot of problems? So we have to think through things like that. So, but mainly, I would say I work with the Miss Kay here, which is our venue director.
Thank you. I'm going to ask you the same question, Stephanie. What did your chain of command look like on event day? Because I know typically the event planner doesn't want to be the one to break the news to everyone. So what did that look like for you?
Ooh, tough. I'm on the same page that Nick is. Uh, we had already had a plan, a unified command. Actually have a unified command post. So we had met many months in advance. And I think going back, I have to say kudos to Nick on the relationships. Make sure you're connected long before any of this comes about to all of your municipalities. And again, our fire department was really the one that put all the intricate pieces in a plan as far as like any plan of action for weather or bombings or people driving cars through. We have an emergency plan for everything. But again, it doesn't work if you don't know who you're working with. I think that's key because you've got to understand how they talk and how, it relates to what you're doing. But at the end of the day, it's all about safety. So nothing else matters. And you have to keep that at the forefront of your mind. It's all about the people coming in and it's the safety. But our police and fire, all the municipalities, town manager, the mayor, we met several months and it wasn't just a one-time thing. And then once you have it down, you still have to keep checking to go back to make sure it's right. But yeah, and then I had a board of directors. So again, I think Nick's right. Everybody has a say so, but I mainly worked with the president and vice president, myself, and then we also had some county commissioners, and he's right, your politicians like to have their fingerprints on things as well. Because we had to, for one event with bad weather, we had to establish a state of emergency for flooding. So they held off. They're the ones you have to know who ask for these things. Also, so I can't just call up the state and say, can you give us a state of emergency? You have to know how to go through those channels. And we had to do that. And they said, we'll wait until the festival tells us. They were great. They said, you guys, you assess the situation, you make the call. And they let us wait till the very end of the festival because we ran it, even though the weather was sketchy, very rainy, very floody, very windy, but everybody was safe. And we went ahead and did it. That was not the hurricane one. That was a different one.
Mhm.
But again, the whole time we were in touch with our weather, our fire department, our city officials. It wasn't something we just talked about that morning and left. It was a constant all day long fielding questions and being in touch with everybody. So um, eventually I was the one that made the announcements, but we put it out through our social media.
Yeah.
Now you're gonna get some people are gonna be mad and some people aren't. You should cancel it. And then other people are like, yeah, you should have it. So that's just something you got to live with. So don't worry about it. But again, at the end of the day, as long as you're keeping people safe. Did I
Since
answer
you
your question?
It did, but since you mentioned that, I have this a little further along, but we'll talk about it now. How do you handle the backlash on social media?
Well, I'm lucky. My daughter has a marketing degree, a master's in marketing, and of course, she happened to be there that weekend. And you should always answer all the questions. Don't not answer people. They expect either a thumbs up, thumbs down, thank you, thank you. It can be a blanket statement to everybody, but you do need to respond because sometimes no response causes even more ruckus. So we did answer all the questions, and you just have to take the negative with the positive. It's going to be there. It's just the way human nature is. So,
Yeah,
But I
that's
think that starts during the event and before the event.
sure it
You have
does.
to cancel it. Just be honest with them.
Correct.
Having to cancel, here's the situation. You
Mhm.
can't tell them every little detail if it's a real bad, okay? But you've got to be honest with them. Yes, they're going to be mad, but in the end, they're going to get it. But look, we got Monday morning quarterbacks everywhere. Everybody's got them. You're not going to be able to please them. But I'm just like you, Stephanie. Just be honest with them at the end of the day, and don't get in an argument with them over social media by any means. But
Yeah,
be honest with them up front, and I think that will take 95% of the backlash off. But in the position we're in the public eye, you've got to have some thick skin about you to survive. And
that's exactly right. Put
so,
your armor on.
yeah,
And we did find that a video does work better because people can see your emotions. They can understand and that you're speaking the truth. And people, again, Nick, you're 100% right. Just be transparent and be honest. That's really what people want. But they could see the raw emotion when I'm telling them we had to cancel that event. I mean, I had tears welled up in my eyes. It was the hardest thing I had to do to tell them we are actually going to, out of 30 some years, cancel this event that has never been canceled. And, when I saw how hard the police and fire and the Duke Energy they had been up for 8 days nonstop, not even going home. How do you put a festival on their shoulders? You don't. And that's what I told the audience. So do a video, don't put it all in writing. If you can do it face to face so people see what you're going through, they'll get it. So we found that to be very effective.
that's great advice. Okay. So
Little,
you've all three mentioned some things about emergency planning, but what are a few things that you think definitely need to be in a strong severe weather action plan? Anyone can go.
I can start.
Okay.
So I think the first part is, to prepare, you need to plan where to meet, where are you going if something happens. The big question is that if. Okay, you have a place where people should meet. How are they going to get there? Are they driving? Are they walking? If there's torrential downpours, are they expected to walk through the rain? And also children, especially when you have lightning and strong winds come into play, there needs to be a plan in place on how the children can find their parents, get to them. Is it safe enough for them to get somewhere, whether it's storming outside? Can they stay indoors? If there's lightning outside, you need that threshold, whether it's 5 miles away. If you can hear thunder, if you can see lightning, it is too close to you. That is a dangerous risk for people. And a plan. Are they expected to go somewhere? Do you want them to go to their cars when there is a severe thunderstorm warning outside? But then when it comes to a severe thunderstorm warning, who's making that decision? You need that person to be the decision maker of this is dangerous. As a meteorologist, I give you what is going on outside, but you need someone to say, all right, this is what's happening. And outside of that, strong wind gusts, even that can pose a threat. Whether it's blowing tents away, that poses another threat to people. If the winds are too strong, if they're exceeding 30 miles per hour, that can start to lift things up and blow them away. So a lot going on. And also, you need to have a plan on how to reach people, especially with weather right now. Not everyone's watching local news. So I think a big thing is digitally website, social media. For us, we have digital. We also have radio. We're on our app every single day. After I go on air and I talk about the weather, there is 5 more things I'm doing after that to reach people. So in that plan, it's a big thing of not everyone's watching the news to see that something was canceled. We talk about it, we'll mention it, but whether it's an app, whether it's on Instagram, Facebook, whatever you want to use, have that way of getting that information out to people. If you do have to cancel, tell them why. So all of that goes into play.
It's awesome. You answered like 4 of the following questions. That's
I
perfect.
know there's so much
Thank
into
you.
that that we have to think about as well for us.
And I would say, I got more than just weather right here with this, and I think this goes to anybody is I think there's a couple of key things here. One, you need to think about whether it's weather related, whether it's an active shooter, whether it's about any kind of event coming to your place. Is one, you need to work with your volunteers. We haven't heard that. Volunteers are some of the biggest people that sometimes we forget. uh, those people see things, hear things, and probably before a first responder. First responder is going to do what they're trained to do. A volunteer does not get trained every day on this, but they're probably going to see it before the first responder does. Two is work with your first responders beforehand and make sure that your volunteers do not allow people to park where the emergency vehicles will be accessing your site. That is one of the biggest problems I see in events. You'll have it marked off for, I went to a show here recently and not the one in Tupelo. Uh, First thing I look for is me being a police officer. I'll look at every exit, right? So I don't even sit with my back to the door out eating. I know I'm weird, but that's just, I don't do it. But in the emergency lane, where an ambulance and people could park, they allow people to park there. They allow limousines to park there. And I'm thinking, man, if they have a problem, they're gonna have major issues here, right? So, and just another thing is, do you work with your volunteers during a time of emergency to point people where to go? Because people are gonna go places even though if you don't tell them. And it would be better if you told people where to go because we're all trained to be told what to do in some ways during a time of emergency because people's going to freak out. Um, and that's what I would say I see a most commonly is work with volunteers and you got to think during an emergency, whether it's weather related or whatever, people's exiting, but first responders are coming. So you need to know how to get them out safely, but also get your first responders so they're not fighting a crowd coming into your venue. Thank you.
Awesome. Great. Okay. Let's move on to crowd communication, which Lexi kind of started to lead us there. Stephanie, what should organizers communicate to attendees, vendors, sponsors, performers, and staff during a rain delay?
Going along exactly what Nick just said, your volunteers are critical. So we always trained our volunteers, not the day before, but at least a week in advance, you give them written information too. To be clear is to be kind. So make sure your communication is clear. It's not a bunch of stuff for them to read through, but it's very clear. It lists, you have maps on where people go. It shouldn't be too difficult. Vendors is the second level of that. Your vendors see a lot, and a lot of times they're going to be the ones that are going to experience something first. So you have to make sure that they are aware also of your procedures to evacuate or if there's a rain delay. What we did is we had everyone actually connect into like a GroupMe app for our vendors, sponsors, volunteers. And that way we could communicate with them quickly. So if there was a rain delay or pause or what have you, we instructed them to download that. Of course, now not everybody gonna do it. But you hope that that vendor is next to the other vendor that didn't download it can say, hey, we just got something. We need to evacuate. We need to, lower our tents. There's wind coming in. We need to get out of here. And that was our way of communication with all of them. And I think I answered that. Is that right? How to communicate with them the best way.
Yeah, or what should you communicate with them? But
Oh, exactly what's coming your way.
Yeah,
So again,
yeah.
having somebody that is keying into what the weather is, what's going on. I honestly myself did not have time to look at the weather all weekend, but I had board members that were, keeping an eye on it and they knew the procedure too. Hey, if it gets bad, we need to call EMA. We need to make sure we check with NOAA. Like I said, they usually were on the property with us. along with our local TV meteorologist who was on the property. So that was another great thing is if you have a local TV channel that is a sponsor of your event, give them a booth space on your festival or event footprint. And I will tell you what, there's nothing better than to have your meteorologist standing there going, well, I'm standing down here at the festival and the winds are picking up and they're going to keep coming up. And so that is a great way to in live time have that emergency information or that weather information disseminated quickly. And again, we also had them download the local weather app as well as the news app. So those are types of things, put them in your vendor information and your sponsor information. There should be one sheet that is nothing but emergency situation communication.
Awesome.
That's helpful.
Perfect. Thank you. Nick, I think you may know an answer to this question, but what communication system should be in place in case cell service is limited or attendees can't hear announcements from the stage?
Well, what we do here is I would have to see directly about the amp, but if you got cell service down, ours still works here. We have Rave is what we have, communications alert system. We just draw a circle, 3 miles around the amp. This is what we say. Of course, phones we have. When you go into our amphitheater, basically, you can have QR codes that people can scan. Whether they do it or not is up to them. But clear, concise, you need to check your speakers, I guess, at the back of your facility or whatever, and have somebody that's, doesn't mind getting out there and being loud. I would, not screaming, but you know what I mean, that commands a presence, so to speak, out there on the stage, and just again be upfront, be honest with people now. But that goes back to your instant action plan. You need to have one for every event that you do. All you got to do is your second, third, fourth page, just take those out, put your new one in, and keep rolling. But also, this goes back to what we call an ICP. I don't know if you know what that is that's your issues, concerns, and problems. Work those out beforehand, ICP plan. And that will get worked out between everybody. That's a great question that every venue needs to have, every festival needs to have. And you can have an A and B plan for that. And everybody just brings their ICPs to the table and hash them out. And that is one of the biggest ones. That's a great question, Kristen. That a lot of people bring to our ICP planning things before events. That answers the question.
Yeah, it does. Lexi, how frequently would you recommend organizers provide weather updates to attendees? Like on event day, if there's a rain delay, lightning, how frequently should they be giving updates?
Yeah, I'd say as often as possible. Especially with weather is constantly changing 24/7. And that's one of the hard things that meteorologists are dealing with is the constant changing of weather. So really as soon as you see something, say something. If you start to see some clouds getting a little bit darker, if you start to see those thunderstorms building, say something. Winds are going to start to build, you start to feel that, even just as a person attending an event, you'll start to see and feel those differences in the weather outside, especially if there's severe weather happening. So I would say as often as possible, keep people updated. If there's something happening, I'm checking my phone, getting updates from the National Weather Service, who will give us updates. And I think over communication is better than nothing. So yeah, as frequently as possible, especially during a severe weather event, or even if it's not severe yet, but you see it's happening. A lot of people are thinking, is it going to get canceled? Is it not going to? Keep people on alert. Hey, we're keeping an eye out. Hey, this is something we are watching, really just as frequent as possible to keep people, what I know kind of situation.
Right. Okay. So when making a weather decision, Should organizers also consider the conditions attendees, vendors, and performers may face while traveling to and from the event? Stephanie, I'm sure you have vendors coming from all over for yours. So are you considering what they will be impacted by when you're making that weather call?
Absolutely. Yeah. You don't think about it, especially our vendors. We also make sure that we have vendors that came from all over the country. So I'll never forget the year when Florida got hit with a hurricane. We lost about 9 vendors right off the bat.
Mm.
So we reached out to them when they had bad weather and situations, and we just let them know, made sure they weren't coming. Most of them couldn't even get out of their state or their city. And so that allowed us time also to go and try to fill those spots. I know that sounds terrible, but at the same time, you just let them know we will refund your money if that's, even though our contract says we won't, that is when you just do the right thing. Doggone it. Sometimes it's not about the money, it's about doing the right thing and giving those vendors their money back at a time when the need would be very great. So, yeah, we keep an eye on that. I think, like Lexi said, you just keep notifying and saying, hey, we're aware that there's weather coming our way or it's 2 states away. But yes, I would definitely, you can't get up with everybody, but at least I think if they know you're keeping an eye on it, they feel that they can trust what information you're gonna give them.
Awesome. Well, Stephanie, since you are our sponsorship guru, how should severe weather planning be addressed in agreements with sponsors and even vendors?
The big question I get all the time. This is where we always have a force majeure in every vendor contract and every sponsor contract. Then we had to add one for COVID, or obviously things out of your control. So that would be my first thing. Make sure you have that in your contract. You have to handle, for us, it was a case-by-case basis. Again, going back to the situation, we had vendors that could not get to you because they couldn't, for whatever reason, the streets are blocked. We were blocked off. You couldn't even get to Eastern North Carolina for several days. UPS, nobody. So you have to take all that into consideration. You can write that contract up, but at the end of the day, I think it comes down to doing the right thing. So one of the things that we did with our sponsors, and this was important, again, you want to keep that relationship open and healthy. And we went and prorated their sponsorship. So for instance, if I had a $10,000 sponsor, I went back and looked how much money I already spent on marketing, advertising, and whatever we had to spend out of that 10. And then we just said, we are going to prorate that. So let's say I spent 2,000 out of your 10, 8,000 will go into next year. So we legit moved all that money into next year, but we gave them the option. If they wanted it back, we gave it to them. If they needed it back, we gave it to them. But 98% said move it to the next year. And that was the way we dealt with that. So I don't know if that helps. Again, just treat people the way you want to be treated. And I think that at the end of the day, it would be what I would say, regardless of a contract, even though you have to have one.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I'm going to take a minute because I did get one question sent to me. What percentage thresholds do you recommend for rain, wind speed, and the proximity of lightning?
You want me to take that one?
Sure, yes.
Is that in terms of canceling event, or where does that kind of fall into play?
Brittany, you're welcome to unmute yourself if you want to answer that. She may not be able to.
All good.
Oh, there she is.
Yeah, canceling. Canceling, gotcha. So rainfall's a little tricky with that. Normal rain, a drizzle, not going to be an issue. But I think that threshold just really comes down to heavy flooding. If it's too much visibility for even drivers to come and to leave home. If you have vendors coming, that heavy downpour that can cause danger even getting to the event, that's a little too much. That is where, torrential downpours, and for the timing of that, how long, if it's the entire event going on, that's when that threshold, I think, would come into play for rainfall. Drizzle, light rain, not as bad. When you have nonstop downpours, especially during the hours of your event, that's when I would go into that. Strong wind gusts, damaging wind gusts, I would give it around over 30 miles per hour is when that caution should start to raise. Above 50 miles per hour, that's really when you start to reach that severe thunderstorm warning, when you can start to get the potential for 1-inch large hail. Strong wind gusts, I would give it around 30 mile per hour is that threshold. Hey, there's something going on during our event. 50 is really when I would start to get into that mindset of severe weather's coming. This is when we need to start planning. What was the third one? Rain, wind.
Sorry, 1 second. It was my proximity of lightning.
Lightning, that's kind of a personal choice. If you can hear thunder, you're too close to the lightning. Again, you have the lightning strike, thunder is going to be that reaction to it. So if you can hear that thunder, that's going to be a reaction. The threshold for that, I would say normally is around 5 miles per hour is when you start to get that hint of, okay, something's going on. But I do think that's more of a personal choice. If your event's outside, that shouldn't be a whole separate issue of canceling. But if it's inside, that's also a different play of, okay, severe thunderstorm warning versus a watch comes into play. So yeah, I think lightning around 5 miles per hour proximity is that threshold to how close your event is.
Thank you.
Can I add something to that, Kristen,
Yeah.
real quick?
Mhm.
I know that a lot of times tents come into play with the wind. And again, that is, you make sure you read your contracts with your tent provider. Also, our fire department was involved with all of our tent approvals, and they have to have certain parameters built into those tents for wind. So just make sure you are fully aware. There you go. There's Mr. Classic Tent. He can tell you all about it, but just my experience, we had to take down a large circus type tent, and our winds got up to 33 miles about an hour, and that wind gust would come right under that tent and lift that pole in the center off the ground, because I was standing right there holding it, which like I was going to be able to hold it to the ground. But most of your vendors have small, y'all know, pop-up tents. We had a mangled mess. One night we had winds come up overnight. The vendors had no clue it was coming. It was just one of those freaky things. We live on the water. The next morning we had 28 tents down, gone. Our board picked up every one of them. My husband went out and bought every tent in Morehead City, and my board put up new tents for every single vendor who lost a tent. So just be aware, again, like Lexi says, be aware of those winds that are coming in. They can take out those little tents. And then again, be sure that you understand the weather, winds, and everything written in your contract with your tent rental people, because that's important. We had to pay for a 40 by 20 tent that got torn up overnight due to winds. We couldn't take it down. They couldn't come in the middle of the night, take it down. But guess what? It was our responsibility because we signed that contract, and they were out of town and could not get there. So just all those things just to keep in mind: wind, rain, lightning, all of that also has to do with your tents.
I just want to add quickly onto that. On top of all of those, the heat. People are forgetting about the heat, especially locally here. Temperatures in the 90s. When you factor in the humidity, it feels like triple digits. We have had a lot of events here in Charleston that are outside, of course, beach. But again, we're looking at feels like temperatures above 100 degrees for an extended period of time. And once we get to around 106 feels like, that's when the National Weather Service will start to reach out to us and give us a heads up that advisories may be needed. So especially the heat in the summertime, if you have, depending on ages, younger children, older adults coming, not everyone can withstand. Here, we have reached around 115. Mount Pleasant saw 116 feels like temperatures for an hour. That is not normal. So the heat, especially with wildfire smoke, air quality alerts are another thing. So there's just more, that you have to factor into it outside of just the regular rain, wind, lightning sort of thing.
Thank you. Nick, I'm going to go back because I skipped a question that I think we should get an answer to. What should organizers know when they're trying to identify shelters and evacuation routes?
Number one, know where they are. Number two, communicate those very well. Volunteers, number one, train them beforehand, as Stephanie was saying. Those are your golden nuggets, so to speak. They're going to tell people where to go. And like I said a while ago, know where these first responders are coming in from and tell them beforehand, these are your designated areas. This is where you can park an ambulance. Fire departments are bringing vehicles that are large, they're long, they're not just, can't just park them anywhere. Work that out beforehand, and just and communicate that, have that running before the venue even starts about the exits or whatever. We can't help if people doesn't pay attention, but we do the best we can. I know that I've noticed over the past 2 to 3 years, they started running that at Alabama football games on the Jumbotron a lot, running around the uh, and also there's somebody standing at the gate. When I went in this year to work, there was a young lady there as a student. And I said, well, she was working awesome community hours or whatever, but she said, hey, if you have an emergency, this would be one of the best gates to come out of. She was telling folks as they come in, they had a sign there. So I thought that was very good. People could read it, and she was a person you could answer questions to. So, um, that's what I would say. And before I go to somebody else, I want to throw this in there. When you're planning your event, from my point of view, uh, have a volunteer representative there at every meeting, so you can talk to them, and also have a hospital contact there, because if something goes south, if your event, somebody gets struck by lightning or something happens or whatever, God forbid, that hospital needs to know how many people's at the event, what's going on, because they can get overwhelmed in a hurry. And everybody in America, no matter where you're at sitting right now, I guarantee you, I can walk in your hospital and they're understaffed. They're understaffed. So that's in about any medical profession. So I'm sorry, I know that's not on that topic, but that goes back to some of the other topics, is invite them to the table in your unified command. They're not going to bring everything to the table, but you need to know if your hospital is a level one trauma center. If it's not a level one trauma center, yes, that is the first responders, but it's your job as uh, the head director or whatever of a venue, right? It's not my job to come in and to tell you what to do. It's your job to bring them to the table to say, hey, this is your opportunity, so you'll know. So that's one thing we started doing here. We brought in our ER director. She's super good, and it's been working tremendous, because she says, hey guys, we can't take but X amount at a time of heat exhaustion, right? Because it's 100 degrees here when Alabama football starts, and people get drunk. And I mean, it's tough, right? So you can only run so many lines into people. So we have to keep a trailer for them and then send so many to the ER and then transport the rest of them to Birmingham. Because a lot of our rural hospitals around us have closed. So we're in a 10 county area where people's having to go to Birmingham now when DCH is overrun. Again, I'm sorry. I know that's kind of off that subject there, but I think that's important when we're doing
Yes.
planning for a team.
Yes, that was all very important. Thank you. Before we get to the last question, are there any other questions from the audience? You can put it in the chat. You can unmute yourself. Anyone? Okay. So, one last thing with our panelists as we're coming to an end. If they didn't hear anything else in this whole webinar, what is one action every event organizer should take immediately after this webinar to become more prepared for severe weather?
Reach out to your emergency manager, your police chief, and your fire chief. Get to know them on a day that it does not matter when you don't need to know them, when you're not asking them for something. Just say, hey, will you come have coffee with me and my staff? Will you invite them to a meeting where you're not talking about a venue, when you're not talking about a concert, when you're not talking about, just say, hey guys, we want to get to know you for 30 minutes. This is who we are. This is who my staff is. This is what we do. And just share them, be upfront with them and say, hey, I will be calling you back through the year. This is where we're going to meet at our venue. Show them around your venue, you know, whatever. I don't care if they've been there 20 times. That relationship is going to go. I don't care if you're emergency action plans, if you're writing a contract with somebody coming in. Y'all were talking about earlier. I had no uh, deal about. All I know is I'll walk up there and eat from them and get a drink from them. So, but y'all do. Y'all are the experts. So, invite them there to know you and to know who you are so they can know you beforehand. But do that today, you know, and do them when it costs you something. When it costs you a little time, because if you pour into people, my deal is the more you pour into somebody, the more you're going to get out of them in the future, which in kind will help you out as a leader in whatever you're doing. People will work harder for you if you show them that you genuinely care. It's like Lexi when she's on the news, right? You're a meteorologist, right? You're on the news all the time. Well, if you're genuine about who you really are and people know who you are, they see you at a restaurant, that's what people this day and time are wanting. That will cut out this social media stuff when people are asking 1,000 questions of why did you do this or why did you do that? Well, they know that Stephanie made a decision because Stephanie May is going to make the decision at the next event the same way, right? She cares about what she does. I've heard her say it multiple times just because it's the right thing to do. We don't do things for political reasons or to make money. And yes, we do. Yes, we make money. Don't get me wrong, but we do things because we want to treat people how we want to be treated at the end of the day. And people are going to get more, as a leader, people are going to follow you more and want to help you more if that happens. So thank you all for allowing me to be on here. I'm very honored, Kristen, that you asked me. And I'm definitely not a total expert by any means, but uh, thank you all for allowing me to be here.
You were great. Thank you for being here. Stephanie, would you like to go?
Yeah, I'd love to. Just on top of what Nick said, I would start with a list. I'm a list person and a check the box person. I would go ahead and make out your list of who you need to contact and build those relationships with if you don't already. If you do not have a plan in place, you need to start right now, put down what plans you need to make. Go ahead and write it down so you have it and you check it off once you do it. But go ahead and start writing down those people that Nick mentioned, that Lexi mentioned, that I mentioned, and build that rapport. But you need to make sure you contact them. So go ahead and make that list today. And then also put on there if you don't have an action plan, yeah, that emergency operation plan is key. And that should be top of your list to get that done and situated. And I don't care if your festival's tomorrow or if it's, a year away, need to make sure you have it because I know there was years I did not have it in place. So you just want to be ready. Again, it's like we all think it's not going to happen to us. And the day it happens to you, it will knock you over. I still have post-traumatic stress over the whole situation. It was that devastating because we had so many people that were affected by the weather. Nothing we could control. So You can only be as ready as you can be. That's all I can say about that. But in the meantime, be as ready as you can be and go ahead and build out that plan if you don't have one. So that would be my takeaway. And then one more thing, safety first, period. Always at the top.
Lexi?
Yeah, on top of the planning ahead, I mean, I know you both have talked about that. Mine is more so for weather related, is to get to know your local meteorologist in your area. Every single weather team, every station will have their own weather app. Not everyone's watching the local news 24/7. You know, that's why from a news perspective, we are encouraged and we are making weather updates online, on air, and on social media. Find out who your local meteorologists are and follow them on every form of social media. You know, the second something happens, you know, our news directors are really reinforcing social first. Get that out onto social media. That's where the masses are. Follow your meteorologists. The second a warning is posted, it's out there, it's all over. Yes, you know, Weather Channel, those kinds of things will give it to you. But especially from a localized perspective, you will get more of that detailed information. We know the cities, we know the counties, we can give you more of that direction of where it's going, the wind speeds, kind of that more personalized look than what you might get from a national database where they're just pulling information from the satellites. So go ahead, follow a whole list of all the meteorologists, download. Even if there's a severe thunderstorm warning, you know, you're still getting that information of exactly where that lightning strike is being hit. That's one of my favorite things from the app, is knowing exactly how close it is, and what everyone can get on their cell phone. So following everyone, getting that relationship down, just so you're getting more of that personalized information versus just watching the national news or getting something from on air. This is a little bit more personalized, I think.
Awesome. It's great. Well, thank you all for being with us today. I know that the attendees are leaving today with some plan that they can put into action right away. Thank you again for everyone who joined us. I know it's event season and everyone's busy, so thank you for being here with us. Just a quick announcement. We do have an upcoming in-person seminar. It's going to be in Chamblee. Brittany's on here. She is our secretary of the board, actually, and she will be hosting. So we are very excited. August 13th at 9:30 a.m. You can go and register. We have some great panelists that are going to be there, and we hope to see you there. But for everyone, we hope that you have a safe and successful event season, and thank you again for coming.
Roll Tide.
Go Heels.
We have a lot of Georgia folks on here.
Yes, you do.
But y'all don't like me too well, so thank y'all.
All right, bye.
Thank you. Call me if you need me.